Welcome to the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Training for 2013. It may not be the last version of this year, but it certainly is the first. So my name is Stan Gimmont. I'm the director of the Office of Block Grant Assistance at HUD, and my office has responsibility for administration of the CDBG program. And within that office, we have the Disaster Recovery and Special Issues Division, which manages our supplemental appropriations that we receive over time for disaster recovery purposes. And so we've organized this training in order to be able to acquaint grantees that have recently received allocations of funds in response to Hurricane Sandy, as well as other grantees that received funding in 2011 or in 2012 for disasters that occurred in 2011. And what we'll be doing is talking about the requirements that are applicable to the Sandy funds and CDBG disaster recovery generally. And we'll do that over the next 2 days here in this room. Let me say this at the get-go. This session is oversubscribed at the moment. We have a number of folks kind of showing up where had not necessarily been registered off the get-go. So we're trying to make accommodations for it as we go along here. So the bottom line is every seat that we have in the room is really in play. So it's going to be a bit cozy over the next few days. Appreciate your working with us on those issues, but I think that we'll be able to accommodate everybody as long as we use every seat that's at each one of our tables. Again, what I'd like to do is just give a real quick overview. Don't want to use too much of your valuable time with a general introduction. And Fred, I don't know if you wanted to join us at all. We'll get started. So let me just briefly give an overview of where we are and where we're headed. So in response to Hurricane Sandy, the administration put forth a proposal in early December seeking a total of about $61 billion in response to that storm. The Senate went ahead and approved legislation by the end of December. That did not get through the House before the 113th Congress adjourned. They did, however, come back, pass a slightly different bill in mid-January from the House, and then the Senate approved it without amendment at the end of January, and the President signed it into law on January 29th. So the Disaster Relief Appropriations Act of 2013 provided a little over $50 billion for various federal recovery efforts in response not only to Hurricane Sandy, but also to other qualifying events that occurred in 2011, 2012, and prospectively 2013, at least with regard to the CDBG funding. The 11, 12, and 13 period applies to the CDBG funding appropriated by the bill. So the bill ultimately provided a total of $16 billion in CDBG disaster recovery funding. And it laid out certain timelines. First thing it said was that HUD must allocate at least 1/3 of that money within 60 days of enactment. HUD must also issue a Federal Register notice to govern that money within 45 days. A little bit backwards there, but nonetheless, we're happy to say we've already been able to meet both of those standards. On February 6th, Secretary Donovan announced the allocation of $5.4 billion out of the $16 billion for 5 states and the city of New York in response to Hurricane Sandy. The city of New York received $1.77 billion, if I recall. State of New York, actually it was $1.17 billion for the city of New York, $1.77 billion for the state of New York, a little over $1.8 billion for the state of New Jersey, $71 million for the state of Connecticut, $8 million for the state of Maryland, and $4 million for the state of Rhode Island. These represent the first allocations in response to Hurricane Sandy. We also have issued the Federal Register notice to govern these funds. That was put on HUD's website on March 1st, published in the Federal Register on March 5th. So we are already moving forward at a pretty rapid clip when you consider that the law was only signed on January 29th, and here we are about 7 weeks later, money allocated, notice out, and both the state of New York and the state of New Jersey have already issued draft action plans with regard to their use of funds. So we are moving on a timeline that is far more rapid than we've experienced with any prior disaster recovery appropriation for the CDBG program. The legislation also sets a number of other requirements that are somewhat new to our disaster recovery world. We are required to obligate all the funding available to us not later than September 30th, 2017. That seems like a long ways away, but it's a short 4.5 years in the disaster recovery world. The legislation also directs that this funding be expended by grantees within 2 years from the date in which we obligate it to them. So, for example, if in fact the state of New York action plan is accepted, let's say April 1st, not to say it's April's Fool's errand or anything like that, they would have until March 31st, 2015 to expend those funds. That's a very, very rapid timeline for them to stand up programs and move that money out the door. Nonetheless, that is the requirement under the statute. The Office of Management and Budget could issue a waiver to that 2-year deadline, but we'll wait and see how that plays out as things move forward. But the intent at this point is to see how far and how fast grantees can move in the short run given these deadlines. Concurrently, there are a number of other requirements that make a first appearance in CDBG disaster recovery world. The fact that the Secretary is to certify to policies and procedures grantees have to ensure that they do duplication of benefit checks, that there's processes to avoid fraud, waste, and abuse, that you have adequate fund control processes. There's 6 different items on that punch list. So we've asked for additional information from every grantee up front in order for the Secretary to make that determination in advance of providing a grant agreement. So again, these are all sorts of things that we're going to get into over the next few days here in the training program. That being said, I can't quite jam everything into about 5 or 10 minutes here, but I do want to make the point again that this is a bit of a different scenario than we've faced in the past with regard to disaster recovery. Everything seems to be moving on a far more expedited timeline than ever before, and certainly, from HUD's side, need to be vigilant about how everybody's handling that, making sure that they understand the requirements, that the plans are put together are responsive to the needs, not only within the communities that were affected, but also to the requirements of the law and the regulations. So again, we're going to be focusing in on those issues as we move forward over the next couple of days. I want to take this opportunity to introduce Tennille Parker, who is the Acting Director of our Disaster Recovery and Special Issues Division within the Office of Block Grant Assistance. Tennille. Tennille will be your Master of Ceremonies here over the next few days. She is a wonderful person to work with, exceptionally knowledgeable, very tolerant of me, and she really has a wealth of knowledge, and she will be able to convey that to you, and I think it's going to be a real treat to have her up here taking care of business over the next few days. She's joined by the entire staff of the Disaster Recovery Division. And folks, DRSI staff, just stand up so everybody knows where you are. Familiar faces, you'll get to know them over the next few days. But we're looking a little outnumbered, gang. Again, they're going to be around over the next few days, and please feel free to ask them questions. Pick their brains with regard to experience, because again, there is a fair amount of experience here based on what we've been doing over the last 10 or 12 years in disaster recovery. So take advantage of this opportunity to talk with them, get to know them, establish the relationships that will help you implement your programs as you go forward. Let's see, we are also joined by any of a number of other folks which you'll get to know from our policy development and research staff, our general counsel's office, our various field offices are represented here that work with many of you on a day-to-day basis, and they will be picking up more and more of the load here with regard to disaster recovery as we move forward as well. So that being said, what I'd like to do is maybe turn it over for a few minutes to Fred Tombar. Fred is Secretary Donovan's Senior Advisor for Disaster Recovery purposes, and he has really been working with us very closely over the last 4 years on everything within the disaster recovery world. Fred comes to this position from somewhat firsthand knowledge of disaster recovery, being a native of New Orleans, having worked on the recovery in Louisiana post-Katrina. So again, Fred is exceptionally knowledgeable with respect to our role in the disaster recovery world. And so I asked Fred if you have a few minutes you'd like to talk with everybody.
Thank you, Stan, and good afternoon and welcome. Just wanted to address you for a few minutes on behalf of the Secretary and just say thank you for coming here and to let you know that we are here today, but we'll be here throughout your recovery journey to help you out. One of the things that I think Stan may have mentioned was that, and many of you in this room have already heard, the Secretary has been asked by the President to lead this Hurricane Sandy Recovery Task Force. It is a task force that brings together not just all of us at HUD who work on disaster recovery from a number of different vantage points, but also across the federal family, bringing together people to do what we all were given a dictate to do in our days immediately following Hurricane Sandy by the President, which was to find a way to get to yes, cut the red tape, and do whatever we can to make sure that we aid you all in your recovery, to make it as expeditious and as thorough as possible. And so this training is a part of that, the answer to that call from the President. Bringing you all in the room collectively with the people you're going to need to be working with over the next several years as you develop your plans and implement those plans, but also an opportunity, and we think there is great benefit in this, in getting to know one another across state lines, because I say the thing that you can do best is to learn to flatten the learning curve as quickly as possible and as well as possible. And so this training, the interaction that you will have with your peers in other states will help greatly with that. Just a couple of things, if I could, just to impart to you all. As Stan said, there is tremendous pressure. The Congress was clear about its desire to see this money spent quickly. I cannot tell you the number of times over the years, in the 4 years that I've been with the administration, that we've received calls from congressional offices looking at disaster recovery balances of CDBG funds that are still out there unspent, with the question of, as they're trying to find ways to do things like balance the budget or deal with other government needs, is that money still necessary, right? And so Stan and I often have to take the calls or take a meeting and explain exactly what you all are going through. That recovery is hard, it takes a long time, and yes, that money is very much still necessary. There are needs that are still unmet that we allocated the money to address that still haven't been met. It baffles the mind of those who haven't been through it that money could be still on the books years later, because in the mind of the congressional people who have appropriated this money, this is emergency money, and for them an emergency means you need it right away, you spend it right away. but they don't get and understand the complexity of the recovery. So we're here to help you with that, to fight those battles for you, but you can help us with fighting those battles by doing what the Congress has asked, and that is, again, shorten the learning curve, doing what you can to put realistic plans in place and implement those. We have, fortunately, the Congress was wise in its decision to give us resources to be partners with you all, and actually be able to come out, travel, provide technical assistance, and really work with you through this work that you'll be going through in your recovery. They've also given money to our friends at the Inspector General's office, much more than we think they need. So they'll have a lot of time and a lot of resources to come and visit you and to make sure that that you're doing what the Congress intended with this money. And so if for no other reason, I'll leave you with this. Pay attention. Get your 5-hour energy, drink your coffee, whatever you need to do to stay awake. Hear the good things that are going to be shared with you over the next few days. The thing we hate most to do, even more than talking to the Congress and justifying why money hasn't been spent, is to sort of beat back the IG on your behalf. And we're here to support you and do that. But if there are infractions that are made, the IG will catch them, and we don't want to see that happening. The human toll that these disasters have brought on your communities is real, and the purposes for which the Congress has given the money are clear, and it is to help you all with your recovery. And we want to make sure that you do that in the right way, and that more than anything, that you build back your communities in a way that is smarter, safer, and stronger than they were before. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stan and to Neil and to their team. And I want to, before doing that, just congratulate them and thank them for the effort that they put into this. As Stan said, there has been, you just measure it by any other appropriation that's happened. The speed at which we've done everything associated with this appropriation is far beyond that of any other milestones in the past. And so this team has done great work and will continue to do great work. So if they take a little while getting back with you all and answering a phone call, be patient. They are working, always working hard. If an email isn't answered in a timely fashion, know that it's not being ignored. It's going through deep contemplative discussion back at headquarters and with our partners in the field. We are here to work with you all, here to help you all. And again, thank you and welcome on behalf of the Secretary.
Okay. So what I think I'd like to do at this point, again, is turn it over to Tennille, and she'll walk you through a bit of the agenda for the rest of the day. I think that to the extent we can get a few minutes jump on the programmatic aspects of the day, that would be a good thing. So, Tennille, go ahead.
Good afternoon, all. Wow, it seems like for several of you, it's been 6 weeks of phone calls, so it's a good time to meet you for our, what I'll call the juniors and the seniors of our disaster recovery class, our partners from Louisiana and Texas and Mississippi. Thank you for joining us. Many of the new grantees need to hear from you, and we appreciate the opportunity to have you here. For all of our newer grantees, welcome. For the staff of HUD, who are now disaster recovery grant managers, welcome as well. These next 2.5 days will be an opportunity for each of us not only to get into the weeds of disaster recovery as it relates to the CDBG program, but also one of the things that our team has strived to do with this agenda is to enable the scenarios and the discussions to be informed discussions. And I primarily want to point to the roundtables that are being hosted by each of our partners. They're not only grantees from Katrina, Rita, Wilma, Ike, and Gustav back in 2000 5-6 and 2008, but they're also newer grantees. We heard feedback from our last training that you need to hear from your peers, those who maybe perhaps didn't get double-digit millions or billions, but certainly a significant amount. And those folks are here, so we're really excited to have them as well. Just to spend a few moments to walk you through the agenda, but to also let you know of the resources that are in the room. One of the pieces of feedback that we also received last year is an opportunity to not only receive training, but to speak to our partners. And so I'm pleased to announce today that we have representatives from the Small Business Administration. Frank Adenoff, if you could raise your hand. Thank you. We have our partners in HUD's Office of Labor Relations, Gary and Tony, if you could raise your hand. These are the folks who you would normally work with as it relates to Davis-Bacon and wage requirements. Please talk to them. They're available for questions. Did I mention please talk to them? Our environmental partners are here and in fact doing a presentation as well. We have a relocation specialist for the Sandy region. Thank you, John, if I got that correct. We also have representatives from, I believe, EPA here. Okay, I know they mentioned they may be a little later, specifically as it relates to the revolving fund. Any other partners that I missed? Yes. The Office of Inspector General is also joining us today, and we asked them to be here, Stan, so and where's Fred? And Fred, we asked them to be here. We wanted our IG partners to be here as well for two reasons. One, to give you an overview of what exactly their role is, and two, for our benefit and yours as well, so that they understand the type of information and guidance that we're giving you, but also the nuts and bolts of the CDBG Disaster Recovery Program. I'd also like to acknowledge we have our partners from Public and Indian Housing here. Some PHAs are actually here today, but we also have Public and Indian Housing staff. One of the reasons why we made the invitation is that for particularly our newest Sandy grantees, there is a set of requirements that are unique to public housing, not the least of which is that there should be a set aside for addressing the needs of public housing units, public housing inventory in the disaster impacted areas, and the consultation. And so for those who have not yet completed that consultation, do that immediately. That's certainly a required piece. It is something we have to factor in as well, and there's still time to do it before the submission of action plans to HUD. And so not only do we encourage it, we require it. With that, I'll go through very briefly the agenda and we'll be able to start right on time. One of the things that we'll go into right after this is an overview of the CDBG allocation for disaster recovery, and our data team is here led by Todd Richardson and Ben Winter to walk you through that. For those who have had preliminary questions on FEMA data, why do we use it? What is it used for? SBA data, how you should be considering other data as you prepare and review and update your action plans, this is helpful. And I encourage you to not only jot down some questions, but to take to heart the information that's being shared with you. I will go to a break right after that and then an overview of CDBG disaster recovery. For those of you, and I think a few of you who were just hired 2 weeks ago, this is the overview you've been asking for. This is where we walk through larger scale, what is it that disaster recovery encompasses? Why is CDBG the vehicle that you may use? What are the expectations of these funds? We'll round out the afternoon with an overview of our disaster recovery grant reporting system, and I'll highlight that it's an overview. It's meant for a broader audience, but one of the things our team is committed to is technical assistance. And so even with the overview this afternoon, there are actually dedicated training for your staff, for you, to obtain training on using the DRGR system, Disaster Recovery Grant Reporting System, inputting data, understanding what that data is, being able to extract it, to be able to tell your story, and how HUD uses that. If you're interested in that training, you should definitely let your HUD representatives know, or any member of the team that has raised their hand earlier, so that we can match you with that training. We are actually trying to get a survey of those in the New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey region, because that's where we're going to launch the training, this round of it first. Last, we'll go to assessing disaster recovery needs. And this is a session that actually relates to everyone in the room, even those who received funding in a previous allocation. Assessing your needs and understanding what still needs to be done, even after you factor in the FEMA assistance, the SBA assistance, insurance, and other resources, this is critical. And just saying there were a lot of people impacted by the disaster isn't going to cut it. You must know exactly what those needs are so that you can allocate resources accordingly. You see it every day, and I've heard stories from many of you about what you're finding when you drive the streets and you go to these neighborhoods. The challenge for us and for you is to be able to articulate that both qualitatively and quantitatively, so that it makes sense why you're plugging in X million of dollars. And for most of you, we're talking millions. It is that level of assistance. Throughout the session, we'll have breaks, and you'll be able to ask questions. I will note that we will also try to stay on time to accommodate both questions. Each day, though, in the morning, if there are particular questions that need to be queued up, our staff need to know that so that we can answer them in the broader audience as well. And I see you motioning. All right. With that, I'll turn it over to Stan. We'll do an overview of the agenda each day, so I won't go into Tuesday. This afternoon, for those joining us this evening, we'll also make an announcement about getting to our site and payments for this evening. Thank you.
So let me just say, while this training program is a great start, it is not the end of the training effort that we'll have with regard to CDBG disaster recovery as it relates to Sandy and all the funding available under the 2013 Act. Clearly, we're going to try and set the table here over the next few days with all the things that grantees need to do on the front end to get a plan developed. Get your program established, get it implemented, get it up and running, make sure it complies with all the various requirements that are out there. But at the end of the day, this is a continuing education process, really. So as we go forward over the next few months, we'll have a series of other efforts to get information out to you, most likely in the format of some webinars, things related to fair housing, equal opportunity issues, as well as potentially interface with Environmental Protection Agency folks once we get around to the point of allocating money that may well be used for infrastructure activities. So with that, what I'd like to do is give it over to Neil, and we'll get started with the program. And thank you very much.